In our journey to holiness and godliness, we had been traveling in retrospect with the early accounts of Jesus Christ and his apostles in the scriptures. We sought the guidance based on how they had lived their lives as believers and contrast it with how we live ours today through the help of course, morality. We learned about how cunning and complicated human actions are and how laws and conscience lead us back to goodness as we believe them to be one of the bases of goodness and the voice of God. Today, we move towards understanding ourselves in the conducts or in our conducts in accordance to the standards of our conscience. If it project a positive trait to be morally good and responsible. If it be positive, we consider it as what we call virtue. And if it is negative, then we consider it the opposite, which is our vices. Okay? Now, when we talk of virtues, they came from the Latin word virtus, which signifies manliness, or the courage and the excellence or perfection of a thing. And that is what we are going to take part of here in the first part of our lesson. Now, of course, I have given you the etymological meaning or the etymology of the word virtue, which I have said in the previous slide as a Latin word called virtus, manliness. In your own words or on your own knowledge, what does virtues mean? Virtues. What does it mean to you? When we talk of virtues, do we mean everything as good? Now that's another question to be answered. But we are given here in this slide a little detail or a little note that says we have also some basis of what virtues are based on the studies of Plato and Aristotle. These are, of course, in the nature of philosophy and ethics. But instead of philosophizing virtues and vices, we try to look at it in a more spiritual way. So we try to look at the definitions or what was stated according to one of the personages in the church, which is we have here Saint Augustine of Hippo, which says that virtues are of good habits, consonant with human nature, which means to him it is innately embedded on a human person. Virtues are good habits that are embedded within a person. Pwede bang mabago ang virtues if it is innate? Pwede bang naipanganak kang without any virtues at all? This is another question we have to unravel. Okay? Now, once the good characters are being developed and practiced consistently, like for example, being honest in children, when we try to embed some good characters, good personalities, good virtues to young children and consistently practice it, these are going to be classified as virtues. Why? Because it is being repeatedly done. So, kapag ang bata, honest siya, simula nung bata pa siya, paglaki niya, ibig sabihin, he already or she developed that virtues consistently being practiced when she was or he was a child. Hence, there are three important elements that must be taken into consideration regarding virtues. First, that a virtue needs the notion of a habit. Kailangan paulit-ulit na ginagawa. Hindi mo matatawag ang isang character or value as a virtue if hindi siya paulit-ulit. Kunwari, you're just being honest when you face your loved ones, and when you face other people, you do not become honest anymore, you become dishonest. Then that doesn't mean that it is a virtue. Kasi occasional na siya. When only you become honest when you're facing your family, but when you're facing other people, you become dishonest. Then that impedes, no, the definition of virtues according to Saint Augustine of Hippo. These are, of course, virtues are accompanied by good actions. Good habit accompanied by good actions. Second, a virtue must possess goodness. Kaya nga siya tinawag na virtue, manliness, the courage and excellence of perfection, because it is good. What is our basis of perfection and goodness? That is Jesus Christ. So taking that into account, virtue should be out of goodness. And third, a virtue corresponds to human nature. Sabi nga natin, it's innate. It's natural within a person. So whether it's a call of an unnatural, unusual call, but it is good, then we call it a virtue. Since all are created by God in His image and likeness, again, then everybody is called to be faithful to our own identity of being good and of becoming righteous, and by using one's intellect and will properly and correctly. Again, when we talk of virtues, we mean it to be good habits. This is one of the major points in which you should highlight. These are good habits. Virtues are good habits. This also gives us a disposition to do good actions. Sabihin natin, when habits are accompanied with good actions, they become virtues. Okay. Next. Okay, we develop our dispositions or habits of being good when we do it consistently or repeatedly. Human acts are morally good and conforming to norms of morality, and are performed consistently, then virtues are developed. However, when that happens, the opposite happens when human acts are morally bad and are not conforming to norms of morality and are performed consistently as well, vices are then developed. So consistency is one of the most important factors of developing virtues and vices. So be careful and try to assess yourselves on the habits or actions that you consistently do. Because when you always do a thing or an action or a character, then it may develop between the two virtues or vices. So in turn, as Christians, as followers of Christ, we should develop in us good habits so that we can form what we call virtues. Okay, what are the principal virtues? Principal virtues are found again with this note justice by Giotto di Bondoni. Principal virtues they are well known as the four cardinal virtues. We have discussed that virtues are actions which aims at what is good, are being practiced consistently. They are geared towards the realization of our human nature, but they are also classified with two. We have cardinal virtues, principal virtues, and we also have theological virtues. Cardinal virtues are those referred to as four principal moral virtues that govern one's action, order one's passion, and guide one's conduct to realize how it is to be a person fully alive. These virtues are, we have first, prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Importantly, these virtues are within the domain of human efforts. These are being done by ourselves. These are being observed, and these are being, being processed by our intellect and will. One is capable of developing these virtues based on one's rationality and willpower. Okay, they are achieved through the grace of God with the conscious effort of a person to willfully choose the actions that are desirable and acceptable. again, it boils down to our own decisions, whether we do what is good or what is bad. First, okay, I have explained already. These are Christian virtues or values given to us by grace and by charity. So first we have prudence, the virtue of deliberating well about what actions we should do. What should you do? This virtue or this value is very important, especially on decision making. You know what you should do in times of, say, danger, in times of crucial or moral dilemmas. And prudence is also found on the Marian spirituality or Marian value. You know, the 10 Marian values. One of them is prudence. Prudence is practical memory. Remember that it is practical memory. It helps you to determine what is good and bad and it also helps you guide in your decision making, in your choices in life. Prudence, according to Saint Augustine of Hippo, is the knowledge of what is to be sought. Ano ba ang dapat mong gawin? Ano ba ang dapat mong tangkilikin? And what is to be avoided? Ano ang dapat mong iwasan? What should you do or what should you think, and what are you supposed to avoid? Okay, it is the habit of practical reason which also enables one to judge promptly on particular cases or contingent actions on what is to be done or omitted. Okay, dito na din pumapasok yung ating conscience. When we are stuck on deciding whether to do this or that, then prudence and conscience comes together so that we can think of a better choice in life. No? A prudent person has the distinct knowledge of the facts of life and can foresee the future consequences. You are knowledgeable of what you are doing, and you are aware of the consequences of the actions you are about to take. Okay, what could be the factors which can lead the human person to develop this sort of virtue? Prudence. The very basic foundation would be the good formation, or what we call education, from the family. Remember that the very first education happens within the family, no? And what should we expect on a person who possesses this virtue? A person who possesses this virtue will always be concerned with the right direction of human actions. Expectedly, the person's actions or plans will generally, if not always, produce a good outcome. Of course, prudent ka nga. Of course, you always think of the good actions, the good consequences of your action. Thus, it gears towards good outcome. Prudence will always lead to harmonious relationships and bring about progressive communities. No? An example of a prudent person is that it would be planting trees, for example. A prudent person sees the need to plant and care for trees because it helps in the preservation of the ecosystem and it protects people from imminent harm and danger, such as floods and landslides. This virtue then allows us person to judge properly what is right and what is wrong. So you make an action out of this judgment, no? You know how to weigh things and what is right and wrong. So when you see that there's something wrong, you do unnecessary. You act upon that necessary situation by doing what is good and what is right to correct or to avoid, bad consequences out of that situation. Okay? However, of course, there's a downside. However, this does not refer to mistakenly considering an evil for good, no? Which actually is lack of prudence. It is important then for a Christian to have appropriate information and knowledge. Okay, again, information and knowledge, the intellect is one of the very important aspect in decision making. When you are ignorant about the thing and you thought what you did was right, that it is actually the virtue of prudence. That is lack of prudence because you did not allow yourself to be knowledgeable enough to do the right decision or action towards that situation. It is then, in order to determine whether a response to a certain action is right or wrong, prudence empowers a Christian to use his or her intellect to decide on a particular situation based, take note of this, based on all available information or even evidences at hand. So ignorance is not acceptable or not an excuse when you are trying to be a prudent person. This prudence also includes consultation and careful evaluation of other person's knowledge and wisdom. So you know you're a prudent person when you know everything that is happening and revolving all the angles of a certain situation. Being prudent is one of the characteristics that lawyers should have. Again, we're talking about the law, equity, equality, justice over the rights of a human person. Thus, prudence is really needed on this sort of situations. Now, what could be the other characteristics which are expected from a person who possesses the virtue of prudence? Take note of these ones. We have first, practical memory. Again, we're talking about the intellect, the knowledge that a person has. Practical memory, which is the ability to profit from your past experiences. Now, if you do not profit from your past experiences, thus it impedes also the quotation or statement that experience is the best teacher. Because if you did not learn from your experience, then that makes the statement wrong, which is also lacking, no? Lacking from other people. Sometimes we are given opportunities to learn from our past experiences, but we don't use it. We don't use it as a means or as a challenge for us to do better the next time, to be better in our lives today. Thus, a person doesn't become a prudent person without practical memory, without learning from his or her own experiences. It may come later on. Some learnings may come later on. It doesn't come abruptly. Na you experience it kahapon, you will learn from it tomorrow. It doesn't happen like that. Sometimes it would take you years of years before you unravel that there was a learning coming out of that certain experience in your past, even when in your childhood, and you just learned something, or learned a lesson from it 50 years from now. 50 years ago, you learned a thing when you were, you say, 5 years old. So it happens that way. But nevertheless, as long as you learned from it, you learned from your past experiences, then that's the best thing. Second, practical understanding or the ability to grasp the moral significance of concrete situations. No? Practical understanding, walang personalan. If you try to understand a certain situation, you understand it based on the information given by that situation, based on the angles it is being presented, without, of course, mixing emotions, without mixing personal emotions or personal wrath and anger, personal fever to the person being involved in that situation. Thirdly, we have docility or the ability to take moral advice from others. If you are a person who takes moral advice from others, it gives us, or you give off the understanding that you are not being easily controlled by other people, because you take in what is being given by others by learning from it. You're easily taught, but it doesn't mean you are being controlled. There's a big difference on that one. You're not easily controlled when you take advices from others. ibig lang sabihin nun, you're showing your humility that you are not all, or you do not have the monopoly of everything, which is also correct. Now, when you ask for and you sought for other people's advice, it just makes you a wiser person because you acknowledge the fact that you have only one brain, you don't have two. Okay, you can never, you call this, you can never complete or perfect solving a crime, solving a certain situation without having other people's minds to have a tap on it. You only have two eyes. You don't have four, so you don't see everything. You only have one mind. You don't have two, so you might not know the other side of the story. That's what docility and the ability to take moral advice from others mean. And fourth, we have ingenuity, which is the ability to make a quick and sound judgment. It doesn't mean na dahil sinabi natin quick, agad-agad ka nang magde-decide right there and then. You have to look at all the angles, sabi nga natin. Mabusisi ang pagiging prudent. Okay? And fifth, we have foresight, or the ability to direct one's actions in advance. That is, you are able to foresee what might happen. Now you know the consequences of the actions you are taking part in. That is very important with a prudent person. And sixth, circumspection, or the ability to consider the circumstances surrounding an action. Circumspection meaning you consider all circumstances before doing an action. Pag-iisipan mo ng maigi because you know that there will be consequences that is coming after you have done the action. That is wise thinking as well. And seventh, we have caution, which is the ability to avoid difficulties and obstacles. Since you have thought all of this, you know now, you're very cautious, you know when, how, where to act on a certain situation, no? Kumbaga, alam mo na kung kailan mo ilalabas yung, you call this, pinakatatago mong card. You know when to act at the right time, at the right moment, because you're a prudent person and you undergo all of these characteristics. Okay? The next principle or cardinal virtue is what we have, justice. One of the most needed and important virtue needed in this generation. Okay, justice is the virtue of rendering to each and to all what belongs to them, what is due to them. Justice enables us to act justly in accordance with practical reason. Thus, it also has a connection with prudence, because we have here practical reasoning. And we talked about a while ago that a prudent person is a practical thinker. You know? It doesn't mix his own personal emotions on deciding or on looking at a certain situations before acting upon it. So, justice is the freedom from bias or favoritism. Freedom from bias and favoritism. X yun, a process of using laws to fairly judge and punish crimes and criminals. But that doesn't just end in those circumstances. Because whenever a person speaks of justice, no, the concept of equality is immediately thought of. No? Equality agad ang lalabas sa isipan natin when we talk of justice. But what would be one's reaction if a teacher gives all his or her, all my students, equal grades? Does it make my action justified or a form of justice when I give equal grades to my students, since we are talking about justice as equality? Of course, it is not justice. Why? Because equality here should be understood properly. Okay, justice defines human rights and duties and regulates human relations. Though people can speak of justice to oneself, justice is primarily a virtue concerning one's dealings with others. Now, when we talk of duties and human rights, kasi, we talk about it from the first lessons that we have had, that human rights and duties are being formed or organized based on what we call our divine laws and natural law, which is given, which are being given equally to humans or to all human beings equally. Like, for example, our dignity as a human person, that is an equal right being given to us, a divine gift given to us by God, which is equally given to us. Thus, we can say that that is justice, no? That is what equality talks we are talking of when we talk of justice. Lahat tayo meron nun. That's why napapasok ang equality sa justice, because we have here human rights and duties, which practically, when we try to look at it and read about it, are equally available and applicable to us all. But in our concerns of concerning other people's dealings, we think equality as something very off to justice. Thus, we use the key phrase here to be giving what is due to others. That is what justice is in this sense of dealing with other people. Why? Because it becomes equity. No? You can do everything that you want as long as wala kang natatapakang tao. Okay? Respecting the dignity and the worth of others is at the focal point of justice. Thus, instead of using equality, since we impede already the definition of dealing with others in justice, we take a closer look at the word equity, because it says we are giving what is due to other people. You are giving what is due to the efforts of my students. I am giving what is due to a student who have given off the right efforts in my subject. Okay, that is justice. I am giving him or her the efforts or the fruits of his or her efforts in my subject. That is justice. That is equity, not equality. Because when you talk of equality, when I gave one of my students 75, I have to give all of you 75 grades. That's equal. But when we talk of equity, I am giving you what is due to the efforts you have performed in my class. Okay? Thus, when we talk of justice, it ensures that others are treated fairly. So, hindi pwedeng equal. And any deviation from what is acceptable and what is fair position of an individual for any possible sanction or punishment corresponding to the commission or the omission of an action. See? Again, take note. For stricter concerns or stricter explanation of this, we use equity instead of equality. But using equality in justice is not also bad, since sabi nga natin kanina, laws are made to be equal to everyone because these are given to us naturally and based on divine and natural law. Okay? The next virtues we have fortitude, the virtue of constancy in holding fast to good actions even when they are difficult. This, I think, is one of should be the one that was challenged to us since 2019 with the plight of the COVID-19 and other problems faced by the country. I think fortitude was tested. The value or the virtue of fortitude was tested to us all. Now, what is fortitude? What is fortitude and what does it do to us as persons? Now, fortitude or courage or bravery, is what we call the moral and mental strength to venture, withstand danger or fear. See? With the many temptations, the bad influences and threats surrounding the human person, surrounding us, and the apparent good that they offer, prudence may not be enough, knowing what you should do might not be enough to be able to live an upright life. Good decisions in life and in many difficult circumstances actually may not be realized without the other virtues, which will motivate the human person to execute or implement them. This is where fortitude and courage comes in. In the midst of trials, strong temptations, and great challenges in life, one should neither give in or give up, but must be strong. Not just, of course, in confronting these trials, but also in overcoming them. This is where the virtue of fortitude or courage is mostly needed. You know? In the midst of trials, the virtues of fortitude and courage enables one to endure pain, danger, that with calmness of reason. Can you imagine a person to be calm in reason and in will with these experiences or these situations? Pain, danger, death. These are the most grave, circumstances or experiences a person undergoes, and it is being said to us, explained to us, that courage, fortitude, bravery is what makes a person when he or she is calm in times of pain, danger, and death. Sometimes it's very unrealistic, but it could also be real, or it could happen, and it is happening as well. Fortitude was tested to us, but look at us now. We stood strong the despite the unwanted, despite the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic since last year. We have been staying strong for a while already, and we already have created a new norm. Yeah? We have lived through the pain, through the dangers of COVID-19, and we should be proud that we are staying strong as time goes by, because um, we now know what to do. We are given the gift of prudence because we now know what to do in cases or in situations that we are facing now with the COVID-19. We could already go out because we know that somewhat we can be safe when we follow the rules being set by the authorities. That is being prudent, choosing to follow the rules because you know that it will not only benefit yourself but it will also benefit other people is some sort of a showcase of prudence. And fortitude is also showcased by our willpower to overcome, to live as if it is normal despite the um, abnormal setting or setup that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought us. So we should clap for ourselves, to ourselves, that we have done a great job of staying patient and living up till today. Okay, fortitude is moving on. Fortitude is a virtue needed in pursuing the moral good, be it the common good or the private good. It is considered as one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Now, examples of brave or virtuous peoples are: we have soldiers who defies that defending our country, the martyrs who chooses that than deny their faith. Can you imagine that if you do that today, I might ask you to defy that, or to, deny your faith or die. I'm sure every one of us would say, I could always lie and ask forgiveness from God that I have lied. No. Well, and of course, you have a public servant who is ready to fight graft and corruption in spite of threats of his or her own life. A student who prepares her or his lessons every day in spite of the many difficulties being faced. I salute these students, especially in our new mode of learning. Those people who truly and honestly do their best in their academics despite and in spite the difficulties of online classroom, and a business person who is honest in his or her dealings with clients. Sometimes these are just small things that we do, but it means a lot when we look at it. You know, your efforts of waking up early just to meet your requirements, your efforts in making sure that you pass your activities on time is already a big manifestation of a courageous person. As a student, you're doing your job as a student, and teachers giving what is due to their students. This, in spite of this new normal, we know that it is really hard to carry on with the accomplishments, carry on with the mode of educating people without seeing them in person is really hard, and of course withstanding the checking time of your papers is something that we should be patient about as teachers, as your teachers. Okay. Anyways, as implied in the discussion and examples I have given you, the virtue of fortitude or courage has two functions. So we have the active and the passive functions. The active function impels the human person to attack or face evil, which means it involves doing something in the midst of great challenges or difficulties in life. Ibig sabihin, you are ready to do something, you allow something to happen in spite and despite of what your situation is. Okay? Ito yung mga active function, for example, yan yung mga martyrs, sabi natin kanina. Active function yung trying to save lives even when your life will be in danger. That is active function. When we talk of passive function, on the other hand, it strengthens the human person to bear difficulties and trials in life. And I think this is being experienced and being done by most of us. I know we have had a glimpse or an experience of trials, tribulations in our lives, and we were able to withstand it. And that is what we call the passive function. It makes the person value the virtue of just bearing or being patient with evil or with a very difficult situation or circumstance in life. Because we think that that is the only way to overcome it, to withstand death. One of the most I think one of the most painful or difficult challenges we have had faced in our lives is losing a loved ones. I think nothing could be compared to the pain being brought about by that. Knowing that you have lost someone in your family, in your life, is really painful and difficult to overcome with, especially when it was accidental, it was unwanted, or it was surprise. You're taken by surprise, no? Walang nag-akala. That is a really painful thing. That has long been an issue, a question to Christians, no? That we should be prepared for that, because since we know that life here on earth is not infinite and there will always be an ending to all, but we are, reality speaks to us that we can and we will never really be ready for that unless you are sick, because when a person is sick and is still in bed, at least we have time to make ready ourselves. But when accidents happen, like unwanted or untoward incidents happen that took someone else's lives, I think that's one of the hardest uh, situations to get out from, to move on from. No, I'm sure that at some point in our lives we had missed a person, we have lost persons in our lives, maybe your grandparents, your parents, your siblings. It's hard to move on. Sometimes we just try to think that in order for our family members to be strong, we have to show that you are strong. We have to show them that you are strong as well, because there is no one to look up to. There's no one to look good. I mean, it's just you give off that sort of synergy, uh, the power of synergy to your family. That if you show how weak you are in this sort of situations, then parang siyang madadala din sila. Everyone will be weak. So someone has to stand strong in the situation so that everyone, or so that other members of your family uh, will be able to withstand it. Even when you're trying to be strong for them, you're trying to be strong in facing them, but actually inside you, you're just ready to crumble anytime, no? You're like a ticking bomb na isang trigger na lang, ikaw din pala ay sobrang nahihirapan, but you have to be strong for them so they could also be strong. And that's the challenge, that's the real challenge I had. I had actually been through this for the past weeks, and I am still trying my best to hold on to my rod. It's really hard when you are being tested this way, because you have to show other people that you're strong, but you're actually weak inside you. So that's a challenge. I hope that as time goes by, we'll be able to realize that we're doing a good job in times of troubles like this, in times of situations like this, when we have to I mean, pretend that we have to be strong for other people, even when we are weak. And connected with the passive and function of fortitude are two important values, which are patience and perseverance. Patience is an attitude or a kind of character which waits for the right way and the right time to act. No? Alam mo kung kailan at kung saan ka dapat uh, saan mo dapat gagawin yung isang action. With this, it always conquers, and it is never conquered. In terms of overcoming a great challenge for a long period of time, the virtue of perseverance is really needed, and I think this is also one of the important items or values you need when you experience a grave pain and difficulty in your life, depressions, and sort of. This is the persistence in good work through a long period of time. You have to endure. That's what perseverance means. I salute everyone who have undergone through the hardest of their lives and have overcome and withstand it. You're a courageous person. You have fought a good fight, and I hope that you continue to be courageous in the common challenges of your life. You will never know, but I'm sure with this virtue, you will be able to know what to do on your next stages or phases of life. And finally, the last principle or cardinal virtue, the virtue of temperance, virtue of curbing the passions that incite us to evil actions. This also has to do with temptations, our passions, no? Our desires. Sometimes it is mostly, not sometimes, but mostly it is associated to sensual actions, but actually it is not just the sensual actions, even with our everyday actions, like for example, our abuse of technology is also one of the ones being challenged by temperance. No? It's a great temptations as well. Temperance is diplomacy, a practice of always controlling your actions or the indulgence. No? Okay. Most people, if most people dream of a person are achieved by strong use of one's free will. We say that we can achieve everything that we will or we dream of if we have the will or the desire, the passion to do it, to achieve it. There are also several goals which are achieved by, take note of this, restraining or holding off one's strong desire. There are achievements in which we can be successful of achieving when we try to hold our desires, especially when it comes to desires that are bad. No, this applies to the sensual aspect of human person. That's why I said a while ago it is mostly being applied to sensual situations for the human person not to abuse the pleasures of the senses. Mostly, what pleasures us is that um, we want more, no? We don't want yung sakto lang. We want more of what we can feel by our senses. That's why we become so abusive. We become so obsessed and so possessive with the things that we have or we experience. Okay? This actually will lead us to the deterioration of our physical health, which later will also affect our body psychologically and physiologically. The virtue of temperance must remain. Thus, temperance, which is sometimes identified with moderation or control, temperance, moderation or control, is a moral virtue that um, regulates desire for sensible pleasures and approves modes of social behavior. Because it is clear to human that human reason and social norms should control people from abusing the pleasures of the senses. This temperance is also part of our the values that should be observed in this Lenten season, the season of Lent, no? Is also sometimes called as abstinence. No? So it doesn't just happen with sensuality. Abstinence. What were you ready to sacrifice during the start of the season of Lent during the Ash Wednesday activity? No? What were your commitments? What were you? What are you ready to sacrifice for uh, the coming of Christ in Easter? Ano yung kaya mong ibigay? Ano yung kaya mong i-give up the season of Lent? And for Catholics, we exercise abstinence na walang karne during Fridays. No? We don't eat meat during Fridays, but sometimes it's not being observed as well. So it isn't so bad. There's an explanation to that. Do not worry, abstinence doesn't just happen with carne. It could also happen with our characters, our actions, our bad actions in daily basis. For example, you try to abstain yourself every Friday from phoning, from playing ML because you have lived almost every day, 24/7 of your time playing Mobile Legends. No, but it doesn't benefit you anyway. It turns out that it rather destroys you physically and mentally as well, and it even doesn't benefit you financially. So it's a problem. It becomes a problem. So you try to abstain from it, and that's also a good abstinence in the season of Lent. You say you abstain yourself from cursing. You know? You are the type of person that curses almost every day, every minute, every second of your life. So you try to abstain yourself from cursing and try to um, talk softly to other people or give compliments to other people. That's also a good thing. No? So hindi lang tayo karne lang. No? Sometimes you also have to look at our lifestyle if it be leading to the lifestyle that Jesus Christ has taught us in the scriptures, or are we deviating too much from it? Okay, so focal point is controlling one's passion. Temperance, you control your own passion, you control your own desire. Moderation lang siya. Everything is good as long as it is in moderation, according to Catriona Gray. See? Okay. The virtue of temperance has the subordinate virtues of what we call chastity for priests, not having sexual intercourse, things not being drunk, that is sobriety, not being drunk, quality of being serious, sobriety. Ano ka, sober, you are sober. No? Because you know how to control. And we have abstinence. Abstinence, the practice of not doing or loving something. Ang pangit ng loving something, of not doing something that you have been doing almost all your lives, that it leads you to ano ba to? To evil already. That's abstinence. Chastity and or purity, excuse me, is a moral virtue of ordering under reason the thoughts, desires, words, and actions connected with sexual pleasures. Chastity and purity. And chastity is one of the values being upheld by priests, the clergies. And neither to suppress it also, but to use it according to the demands of reasons. See? And the divine law. And of course, we have sobriety, is the moderation in sensual pleasures and also the ability to control one's passion, desires, and prejudices. This is being able to control, again, your own passion. See? Could be food if you're a glutton. Those are the things that you should look at yourselves. Sometimes may mga abusive actions tayo, mga characters natin, that when we think about it, it doesn't actually benefit us anymore. We're just doing that because it gives us pleasure. That is also something that is off or wrong, because you are not giving what is due to yourself. No? You are called to be the temple of the Holy Spirit. You are a children of God, so you have to take care of yourself and take care of your own body. Your body is not just a material thing here on earth. Your body is sacred, thus it has to also be good. So yung mga pagiging glutton natin, yung mga pagiging ano ba to, chain smoking natin, we should change those habits into good. Try to make our lifestyles better for the coming years, no? Because this is a precious gift given to us by God, and we'll never know when is the time He will decide to take this body from us. So we should make use of it in a good way, and we are given this body in a good condition. We should return it to Him in good condition as well. Okay, in addition to the principal or cardinal virtues, we have here what we call the supernatural or the theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity, or love. And the greatest of them all is love. No? Charity, when we do charity, we are trying to showcase what is love. Okay? In the documents, kasi earlier times, they make use of the word charity, giving, kindness, goodness, which is represented by love. Baka malito lang kayo sa charity and love. Okay. Bakit siya tinawag na theological or supernatural virtues? Okay, first, often we talk of theological virtues. Of course, you take it from the root word theology, theos, which means God. No? Theology meaning the relationship of God and His people. The study of the relationship of God and His people. That's theology. It's supernatural because we have God as its main object. Okay, it is different from the cardinal virtues because they are, first and foremost, cardinal virtues are within the human domains with God's inspiration. However, when we talk of theological virtues or supernatural virtues, no, they go beyond human limits. They exceed the capacity of unaided human nature. Theological virtues have God as their immediate and proper object, and they are divinely infused and known only through divine revelations. We can never explain them. We can just observe them. For example, faith. We can never see faith. You cannot see it, but you can feel it. It's like the air. That's why it's supernatural. Hope, as well as hope. We just feel it. Charity, love. They can never be explained by the human reason, nor are they being taught or observed and being defended by the intellect. They are only explained by divine revelations by our experiences. Okay? In fact, the theological virtues, namely faith, hope, and love or charity, are the very foundations of Christian morality. No? They are God's gifts to the faithful to make them capable of acting as His children. With these three virtues, we are able to be, no, godlike. Okay, because we are trying to live in accordance with His will. This was actually being pointed out by Saint Paul in his first letter to the Corinthians, when hence, as they are the gifts from God, human beings cannot attain and achieve them through human efforts, but only with God's grace. No? As gifts, they also have to be understood as God's free offer to human beings, and they may be acceptable or rejected. There is happening equality. We are all equally given the chance, the opportunity to experience faith, hope, and love. And maybe some of us are just turning a blind eye to the gifts and graces of God. That's why we don't see it. And that's why we question it sometimes, some point in our lives as well. Okay, again, charity is lost if grace is lost through mortal sin. It is restored by means of confession. That's why confession in the Catholic or Christian life is very important. We try to confess our sins and ask absolution of the sins, no, of our sins. And when we ask for absolution, we don't mean to repeat it. When you try to go to confession and after confession you try to do the same thing again, confession is no longer needed if you repeatedly do that. Sakit na yun di ba? Sabi natin consistency. So if you consistently do bad actions despite your efforts of correcting it, wala din ng silbi if you keep on doing it after being aware that you have done a bad thing. Okay? And so faith, hope, and love abide these three, but the greatest of them is love. Why do we say that love is the greatest of these three theological virtues? Remember, the ultimate manifestation of God's love here to us is Jesus Christ Himself. Okay, faith, it is a positive and active. Active. Faith is a positive and active response to the revealing God. In the three dimensions of faith is you have believing, that is the head, trusting, that is the heart, and doing, that is the hand. So we had the 3H, the head, the heart, and the hand. Okay, love, true corporate respect to God, that is love. In our experiences as a person and as a member of community, sometimes we encounter troubles and problems, not because people are difficult to deal with, but because there is lack of love. That's why we call it the greatest to be. To the three of this is love. It is because without love, we can really never see the other virtues. We can never be faithful if we do not love God. We can never be hopeful, if we do not love the people, or the people that is that are behind our having hope, no? Love is God. Always remember that. Thus it is the greatest, no? Okay, more of that. How do we achieve these virtues, no? Paano ba natin ma-achieve yung mga virtues na to in our daily lives when there are so many temptations around us? No? Again, we go back to scriptures. It is only with Christ at the center of our lives that we can achieve the virtues. Because if Christ is lost in the image and we do not believe in the resurrection anymore, our beliefs, our faith would be nothing at all. It is Christ that made us believe. It is Christ that made us see and experience these virtues. Thus, with Him, we can always develop these virtues. Okay? You can use this is self-explanatory already. You can just read that. Okay, for the summary, you can also read the summary. I have explained it as much as I could. And for the recitation part, please do send me your answers in our GZ, or I could open a forum in which you can send your recitations. So please be guided on what will be uploaded in the LMS. So try to look at the icons as to where you will be reciting or submitting your answers for the recitation part. Thank you for bearing with me for the past weeks, for waiting patiently for me to come back. I am back now, and I hope that you have learned a thing or two in my lecture today. I will see you in the next meetings to come. God bless you always, and if you have questions, please do ask me in my Facebook account, Luriske Puyok Laginday, or in my Gmail, lilyvictorian@gmail.com, or you can just directly message me in our GC. Have a good day, and God bless you always.